I've always been the type of person who prided myself on being a skeptic. You know, the kind of person who rolls their eyes at ghost stories, dismisses the paranormal as overactive imaginations, and laughs at anything even remotely supernatural. That was before I moved into the house on Willow Street. It was a quiet, unassuming little house on the outskirts of town, the kind you might drive past 100 times and never give a second glance. The rent was dirt cheap, which was a blessing considering the dead-end diner job I had just started. The landlord barely spoke a word about the place, only telling me that the previous tenants had left suddenly and under strange circumstances. That's all he said, and I didn't ask for more. Who needs backstory, right? I was just looking for a place to crash. I moved in, settled down, and immediately noticed the house was different. Quiet in a way that made your skin crawl. But I brushed it off as the usual weirdness of an old house, the creaky floors, the drafty windows, standard stuff. Then came the mirror. It was an antique, a massive, heavy thing that hung on the wall across from the bathroom. The moment I saw it, a chill ran down my spine. It was out of place, like it belonged in a Victorian mansion, not a rundown house in the middle of nowhere. The frame was ornate, twisted silver, with strange symbols etched into it. Symbols I couldn't quite make out, no matter how hard I tried. At first I didn't think much of it, but then I started to notice something odd. I'd catch glimpses of movement in it. I'd pass by the mirror, just a flash of something, and my heart would skip a beat. At first I assumed it was my imagination. You know how your brain tricks you into seeing things in the dark, right? But after a while, I realized it wasn't my imagination. There was something in that mirror. Someone. A girl. She was small, maybe 8 or 9, with long black hair that hung in tangled strands, covering most of her face. I would catch sight of her out of the corner of my eye, always blurry, always just barely visible. But the worst part? She seemed to be getting closer. Every time I looked, she was just a little bit nearer. I told myself it was nothing, maybe just a trick of the light or the reflection of a shadow. But then one night, everything changed. I woke up at 3 a.m., no reason, just wide awake, my heart pounding like it was trying to break free of my chest. I tried to roll over and go back to sleep, but there was something wrong with the air. It felt thick, like I was underwater, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching me. Then I heard it. Breathing. Deep, labored breaths. Not mine. Not my cat either, who liked to curl up beside me at night. These breaths came from somewhere else. It was like someone was sitting right next to me, just inches away. I could feel the heat of their breath, feel their presence pressing against me, suffocating me. I lay frozen, staring into the darkness. The breathing was uneven, ragged, almost wet, like someone who couldn't breathe properly. I wanted to move, to scream, but my body wouldn't respond. It was like I was paralyzed, trapped in a nightmare where I couldn't wake up. And then a whisper, a child's voice. Soft at first, barely audible, but it grew louder, more insistent. "Look at the mirror!" The words were like icy needles in my spine. I didn't want to. I couldn't. But my body was already moving. Slowly, involuntarily, as if some unseen force was dragging me toward it. I stumbled down the hallway, feeling the temperature drop as I neared the bathroom, the mirror glistening in the dim moonlight. When I turned the corner, I saw her. The girl was standing there, her face pale, her eyes black as coal, dark pits that seemed to suck the light from the room. Her hair floated around her face like it was caught in a wind, though there was no breeze. Her mouth was wide open, too wide, like it was unhinging, as though it wasn't meant to stretch that way. Her voice cut through the air, a guttural hiss. "Let me in!" I felt my heart stop. I wanted to run, to scream, but I was rooted to the spot. The air was suffocating, thick and oppressive, and I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. The girl's face twisted, contorting into something far more sinister. Her smile stretched unnaturally, too far, like a grotesque parody of a smile, the corners of her mouth splitting open, blood-red cracks appearing at the edges of her lips. And then she moved. Her fingers, pale and cold, pressed against the glass. But they weren't just touching it. The glass rippled like water, distorting her reflection. I watched in horror as the glass seemed to melt, to bend and warp around her fingers. I could feel it, the pressure, pushing through the mirror as if it were trying to drag me in. "I'm already inside you," she whispered, her voice echoing in my head. "I'm already in your skin." I stumbled back, gasping for air. The girl's reflection in the mirror twisted violently, her form shifting like liquid, merging with my own. She was in the reflection with me, her black eyes staring into mine, her fingers creeping across the glass, getting closer to me. I turned and ran, but the air felt thick, like I was swimming through molasses. I could feel her following me, hear her footsteps, light and childlike, pattering behind me, getting closer and closer. My skin crawled with the feeling of being followed by something I couldn't see. I slammed my bedroom door shut, locking it behind me. But the whispers didn't stop. They were inside my head now, echoing through my skull, repeating the same words over and over again. "Let me in. Let me in. Let me in." I couldn't escape them. The girl's presence clung to me, suffocating me. She was in the walls, in the air, in my very skin. Every time I tried to sleep, I could hear her whispering, her cold, clammy fingers brushing against my skin. The worst part? It wasn't just the mirror anymore. The girl was in me. The next morning, I tried to tell myself it was a dream, that it was all in my head. But when I looked into the mirror, I didn't recognize the reflection staring back at me. Her eyes, those black, endless pits, stared back from my own face. "You belong to me now," she whispered, the voice coming not from my mouth, but from the space inside my skull wrapping around my thoughts. "You're mine. Forever." The worst part? I couldn't leave the house. No matter how hard I tried, my feet wouldn't carry me past the door. I was trapped, and I could feel her growing stronger, her fingers pressing deeper into my soul. Every time I look in the mirror now, I see her, not in the reflection, but in my eyes, in my movements, in the way I smile. I don't know how much longer I can hold on before she takes full control. I can already feel her crawling deeper, spreading inside me like a disease. And I know, deep down, that soon, I won't be the one in the mirror anymore. It will be her, and she'll be the one looking back at me.